The stars were burning. Ambassador Thessaly stood at the observation window of the Volanthi command station and watched the distant light of her dying world. Vellum 3, the third planet in their home system, was now nothing more than a ball of fire and ash. The Kravek swarm had consumed everything. Every city, every forest, every living thing that could not escape in time. She pressed her thin four-fingered hand against the cold glass. Her large eyes, designed for the soft light of her peaceful homeworld, reflected the orange glow of destruction. Behind her, the command center was filled with the sounds of panic. Officers ran from station to station. Communication screens flashed with emergency signals from a dozen different colony worlds. "Ambassador," said Commander Yethan, his voice shaking, "we have lost contact with Vellum 3. The evacuation ships, they did not make it." Thessaly closed her eyes. 3 billion lives. Gone in less than a rotation cycle. The Volanthi were not warriors. They had never needed to be. For 10,000 years, their civilization had grown in peace. They were scientists, artists, philosophers. They built beautiful cities that floated on clouds. They created music that could make entire species weep with joy. They had never invented weapons because they had never needed them. And now they were dying because of it. The Kravek swarm had appeared from the dark spaces between galaxies 2 cycles ago. They were insectoid creatures, each one standing twice the height of a Volanthi. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. Their massive hive ships would descend on a world, strip it of all resources and life, and then move on to the next target. The Volanthi Collective had sent diplomats. The diplomats were eaten. They had tried to run. But the swarm was faster. They had begged the other species of the Galactic Council for help. But everyone was afraid. The Tyranni had sealed their borders. The Molochs had hidden in their underground cities. The Kreth had surrendered their outer colonies, hoping to buy time. No one was coming to save them. How long until they reached Volanthi Prime? Thessaly asked. Her voice was calm, but inside she was screaming. 6 rotation cycles, Yethan replied. Maybe less. Their fleet is larger than anything we have seen before. Our scans show over 10,000 ships. 10,000. The Volanthi had perhaps 200 ships, and none of them were built for combat. They were transport vessels, science ships, and passenger liners. Against the swarm, they would last minutes. Thessaly turned away from the window and walked to the center of the command room. Around her, the officers stopped their frantic movements and looked at her with desperate hope. She was their leader. She was supposed to have answers. But she had none. There must be something we can do, she said quietly. Someone we have not contacted. Some species that might help us. Old Navigator Prell, the most senior officer in the room, made a sound of doubt. We have contacted everyone, Ambassador. Every known species in this sector of the galaxy. None of them will fight the swarm. What about unknown species? The room went silent. Prell's gray face became even paler. Ambassador, he said slowly, you cannot mean. Show me the charts, Thessaly commanded. Show me the uncharted regions. Prell hesitated, then walked to the main display screen. His fingers moved across the controls, and a map of the galaxy appeared. Most of it was filled with colored lights representing different civilizations. But there were dark areas too. Places where no one went. Places that were marked with warnings. There. Thessaly pointed to a small yellow star at the edge of the map. What is that system? That is Sol System, Prell said. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. The third planet is called Earth by its inhabitants. It is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. Murmurs spread through the command center. Everyone knew about Deathworlds. They were planets so hostile, so dangerous that intelligent life should never have evolved on them. Most Deathworlds were empty. The conditions were simply too harsh for complex life to survive. But some Deathworlds were not empty. What do we know about them? Thessaly asked. Prell pulled up an old file. The information was limited. Most of it came from long-range scans and a few probe recordings that had been recovered decades ago. They call themselves humans, Prell read. They evolved on a planet with extreme conditions. The gravity is crushing compared to most habitable worlds. The atmosphere contains high levels of oxygen, which is corrosive and highly flammable. The temperature ranges from frozen ice to boiling heat, depending on location and season. The planet is covered with dangerous predators, poisonous plants, and natural disasters. And yet they survived, Thessaly said. More than survived, Prell continued, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and wonder. They thrived. They became the dominant species by hunting and killing everything that threatened them. They even wage war against each other, constantly. They have been fighting among themselves for their entire history. They are violent? Extremely. Our probes detected weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They have poisons that can kill millions. They have developed ways to split the very atoms of matter to create explosions of unimaginable power. Prell paused. Ambassador, these creatures are monsters. Every survey team that has studied them has recommended the same thing. Do not make contact. Ever. Thessaly looked at the small yellow dot on the map. Monsters. That was what everyone called them. Creatures from a nightmare world who had turned violence into an art form. But monsters were exactly what she needed. Send a message, she said. Ambassador. Prell gasped. You cannot be serious. We do not know what they will do. They might ignore us. They might come and destroy us themselves. They might save us, Thessaly interrupted. We have no other choice, Navigator. We die in 6 cycles anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. She walked to the communication station and began recording. To any who receive this message, she spoke into the recorder. We are the Volanthi Collective. We are a peaceful civilization facing extinction. A hostile force called the Krevek Swarm is destroying our worlds and killing our people. We cannot fight them. We have no weapons. We have no warriors. We are calling out to anyone who can hear us. Please, we need help. We need protection. We need... She paused, searching for the right word. We need someone who knows how to fight. The message was sent into the void, toward the small yellow star and its terrifying inhabitants. For 3 cycles, there was no response. The Volanthi began to lose hope. The swarm drew closer. Evacuation efforts continued, but there were not enough ships. Not enough time. Then, on the 4th cycle, something answered. It was not words. It was not a formal diplomatic response. It was a simple signal, broadcast on all frequencies, coming from a fleet of ships that had somehow appeared at the edge of Volanthi space without any warning. The signal contained only 3 words in crude galactic standard. We are coming. Thessaly read those words and felt something she had not felt in a long time. She was not sure if it was hope or terror. Perhaps it was both. The monsters of Earth had heard their cry, and they were on their way. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel like stones falling from the sky. There were 47 ships in total. Compared to the swarm's 10,000, it was a tiny force. But the moment those ships appeared on the Volanthi sensors, every officer in the command center stopped breathing. Volanthi ships were beautiful. They were built with flowing curves and polished surfaces that reflected starlight like mirrors. They had no weapons because the Volanthi had never needed weapons. Their ships were designed to carry passengers, conduct scientific research, and explore the wonders of the universe. Human ships were not beautiful. The vessels that now hung in Volanti space looked like they had been forged in some dark nightmare. They were massive blocks of blackened metal, covered in scars and burn marks from battles that the Volanti could not imagine. Their hulls were lined with rows of cannons, missile tubes, and devices that the sensors could not identify. The ships did not shine. They seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it, and they were huge. The smallest human ship was 3 times the size of the largest Volanti vessel. The biggest one, the one at the center of the formation, was so large that it could have held an entire Volanti city inside its hull. "By the ancient stars," Commander Yethan whispered, "what have we invited into our space?" Ambassador Thessaly stared at the display screen. Her hearts were beating so fast that she felt dizzy. She had called for help, and something had answered. But now, looking at those dark warships, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The communication system crackled to life. "Volanti Collective," said a voice. It was a female voice, strong and confident. The translation software struggled with some of the words, but the meaning was clear. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Navy vessel Perseverance. We received your distress signal. We are here to help. Requesting permission to send a diplomatic shuttle to your station." Thessaly looked at her officers. They were all terrified, but they had no choice. "Permission granted," she replied. 20 minutes later, the human shuttle docked with the Volanti command station. Thessaly had gathered her most senior advisors in the reception hall to greet their visitors. They stood in a line, wearing their finest ceremonial robes, trying to look calm and dignified. The airlock opened. The first thing Thessaly noticed was the smell. The humans brought their own atmosphere with them, and it was thick with oxygen. To Volanti lungs, it was like breathing fire. Several of her advisors began to cough and had to step back. Then the humans stepped through the airlock, and Thessaly understood why they were called monsters. There were 5 of them. They walked on 2 legs, like the Volanti, but that was where the similarities ended. They were tall and solid, built like predators. Their bodies moved with a grace that spoke of danger. Their eyes, set in the front of their faces like all hunters, scanned the room with sharp awareness. The leader was a woman with dark hair cut short and skin the color of brown earth. She wore a uniform of deep blue with metal symbols on her shoulders. Behind her were 4 soldiers in heavy armor, carrying weapons that looked like they could punch holes through the station walls. "Ambassador Thessaly," the woman said. She stopped in front of Thessaly and did something strange with her lips. She pulled them back to show her teeth. It took Thessaly a moment to realize this was supposed to be a friendly expression. Among the Volanti, showing teeth was a sign of aggression. "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez. Thank you for allowing us aboard." Thessaly forced herself to stand tall. "Thank you for answering our call, Admiral. We were not sure anyone would come." "We almost did not receive your message," Elena said. "Your signal was weak by the time it reached Earth, but we heard enough. You said you were facing extinction. You said you needed someone who knows how to fight." The Admiral's eyes grew hard. "We know how to fight." "So we have heard," Thessaly replied carefully. "Your reputation reaches far across the galaxy." Elena made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I imagine it does. The other species tend to avoid us. They think we are dangerous. Are you?" The Admiral did not hesitate. "Yes." The word hung in the air like a blade. Thessaly felt the fear rise in her chest again. But she also felt something else. Something like hope. "We have reviewed your situation," Elena continued. "The Krevek swarm is a serious threat. They outnumber us significantly. Their ships are fast and their warriors are fierce. This will not be an easy fight. Can you win?" Thessaly asked. Elena smiled that predator's smile again. "We did not fly across the galaxy to lose. Over the next several hours, the humans and Volanti held a strategy meeting. The Admiral explained their plan. The human fleet would take up defensive positions around Volanti Prime. They would use the planet's moons as cover to reduce the advantage of the swarm's numbers. They would focus their firepower on the swarm's command ships to create confusion. It all sounded so simple when she said it. But Thessaly could see the calculations happening behind those predator eyes. The humans knew exactly what they were facing. They knew the odds were against them, and they were going to fight anyway. Why? Thessaly finally asked. The question had been burning inside her since the humans arrived. Why did you come? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you. We cannot pay you. We cannot help you fight. Why would you risk your lives for strangers? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer. 200 years ago, she said, my species almost destroyed itself. We had wars that killed millions. We had weapons that could end all life on our planet. We came very close to extinction, not because of some outside threat, but because of our own violence. She paused, looking out the window at the stars. We survived. We learned. We looked up at the sky and realized we were not alone in the universe. We made a choice then. We decided that all the strength we had spent hurting each other would now be used to protect others. We would become guardians instead of destroyers. She turned back to Thessaly. You called for help. A peaceful people, facing annihilation with no way to defend themselves. How could we not answer? Thessaly felt tears forming in her large eyes. But you do not even know us. We do not need to know you, Elena said simply. You were suffering. You were afraid. That was enough. At that moment, Thessaly understood something important. The humans were indeed dangerous. They were violent and powerful and terrifying. But they had chosen what to do with that violence. They had chosen to point it at the darkness instead of the light. The monsters had become protectors. Thank you, Thessaly whispered. Elena nodded. Do not thank us yet, Ambassador. Thank us when this is over. She stood and straightened her uniform. Now, let us prepare for war. The swarm will be here soon, and we have work to do. As the Admiral walked back toward her shuttle, Thessaly watched her go. The human moved like a predator, like something born to hunt and kill. But there was also something else in her step. Something Thessaly had never expected to see in a creature from a Deathworld. Purpose. The humans had not come to Volanti space for wealth or power or conquest. They had come because someone needed them. And that, Thessaly realized, might be the most terrifying thing about them. They were monsters who had learned to care. Ambassador Thessaly had never been aboard a warship before. The Volanti did not have warships. They had never needed them. So when Admiral Vasquez invited her to tour the Perseverance, she accepted with a mixture of curiosity and deep fear. She was not prepared for what she found. The human ship was a world of metal and violence. Every corridor, every room, every surface was designed for war. The walls were lined with emergency equipment, weapons lockers, and damage control stations. The air was thick with that burning oxygen atmosphere that humans breathed like it was nothing. The gravity was crushing, nearly twice what Thessaly was used to. She had to wear a special suit just to survive. Are you comfortable? Admiral Vasquez asked as they walked through the main corridor. Thessaly was not comfortable. Her legs ached from the gravity. Her lungs burned from the air. Her skin felt too hot beneath her environmental suit. But she nodded anyway. Your ship is very efficient, she said politely. Elena smiled. You mean ugly? It is fine, Ambassador. We know our ships are not pretty. But pretty does not win battles. They passed a group of human soldiers marching in formation. Each one was wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons that looked like they weighed more than Thessaly herself. They moved with perfect coordination, their boots hitting the floor in unison. Their faces showed no emotion. "These are our Marines," Elena explained. "The best fighters in our fleet. Each one has trained for years. They can fight in any environment, use any weapon, and survive conditions that would kill most other species." "Impressive," Thessaly managed to say. "Would you like to see them train?" Before Thessaly could answer, Elena led her to a large observation room overlooking what the humans called a training arena. What Thessaly saw inside made her want to run away and never return. The Marines were fighting each other, not pretending to fight. Actually fighting. They threw punches and kicks that connected with terrible force. They wrestled on the ground, twisting each other's limbs in ways that looked painful. They used training weapons that were not sharp, but still hit hard enough to leave bruises. And they were smiling. "Why are they hurting each other?" Thessaly gasped. "They are practicing," Elena said calmly. "In real combat, they will face enemies who will try to kill them. They need to be ready for pain. They need to know how to keep fighting even when they are injured." As if to prove her point, one of the Marines took a hard hit to the face. Blood poured from his nose. But instead of stopping, instead of crying out, he wiped the blood away and kept fighting. His opponent did not show any concern. Neither did anyone watching. "He is bleeding," Thessaly said, her voice shaking. "Should someone help him? That?" Elena glanced at the injured Marine. "That is nothing. A broken nose heals in a few weeks. He will be fine." A few weeks. The words echoed in Thessaly's mind. If a Volante suffered an injury like that, they would need months of medical care. They might never fully recover. But humans considered it nothing. The tour continued. Elena showed Thessaly the medical bay, where human doctors were practicing surgery on themselves. One doctor had deliberately cut open his own arm to demonstrate proper wound treatment to his students. The students watched with interest, taking notes, as if this was completely normal. "Your doctors harm themselves?" Thessaly asked in horror. "It is the best way to learn," one of the students explained cheerfully. "If you cannot treat your own wounds, how can you treat others?" In the engineering section, Thessaly watched humans work on the ship's engines without any protective equipment. They touched surfaces that were hot enough to burn. They breathed in fumes that would have poisoned a Volante instantly. One engineer noticed Thessaly's expression and laughed. "Do not worry about us," she said. "Our bodies can handle a lot. We evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us. We got tough." That phrase kept appearing. A planet that was trying to kill us. Thessaly had seen the data about Earth, but she had not truly understood it until now. These humans were not exaggerating. Their homeworld was a nightmare of dangers. And somehow, against all logic, they had survived it. More than survived. They had conquered it down in the ship's mess hall. Thessaly watched humans eat. They consumed the cooked flesh of animals with obvious pleasure. They drank liquids that contained alcohol, a substance that was literally poison. They ate plants that were covered in chemical defenses. One human offered Thessaly something called a pepper and laughed when she recoiled from the burning sensation it caused. "You eat pain?" she asked weakly. "We eat everything," the human replied. "Some of us even enjoy the pain. It makes the food more interesting." Later, Thessaly sat in Admiral Vasquez's office, trying to process everything she had seen. Her mind was spinning. Her hearts were racing. She felt like she had stepped into some mad universe where the laws of nature did not apply. "You look troubled," Elena observed. "I do not understand," Thessaly admitted. "Your species should not exist. Everything about your world, your biology, your behavior. It is impossible. How did you survive?" Elena leaned back in a chair. "Honestly, We are still not sure. Our scientists have studied this question for centuries. The best answer we have is that our world forced us to become strong. Every generation that was too weak, too slow, too fragile. They did not pass on their genes. Only the tough ones survived. She stood and walked to a display on the wall. It showed an image of Earth, a blue and green sphere floating in the blackness of space. Beautiful in its own way. But Thessaly now knew what horrors lurked beneath that pretty surface. We learned to run long distances to chase down prey, Elena said. We learned to throw objects with deadly accuracy. We learned to work together in groups to bring down animals 10 times our size. We learned to heal from injuries that would kill any other species. We learned to keep fighting even when everything told us to give up. She turned back to Thessaly. And then, when we had conquered every threat on our world, we turned those skills against each other. We had wars that lasted generations. We developed weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. We killed millions of our own kind in conflicts over land, resources, ideas. Her voice grew quiet. We are not proud of that history, but we cannot deny it either. Violence is part of what we are. We evolved for it. We perfected it. We became very, very good at hurting things. Thessaly shivered. And yet you came to help us. Yes. Elena's expression softened. Because we also evolved something else. We evolved the ability to care about others. To feel pain when we see suffering. To want to protect the weak. We call it empathy. It is as much a part of us as our violence. She sat down again, closer to Thessaly this time. We are monsters, Ambassador. I will not deny that. Our history is written in blood. Our instincts tell us to fight and kill and conquer. But we have also learned to choose. We can decide what to do with our strength. We can decide who deserves our violence and who deserves our protection. And you chose to protect us. Yes, because you needed help. Because you were facing extinction. Because the idea of watching an innocent species die while we did nothing. Elena shook her head. We could not live with that. Our empathy would not allow it. Thessaly looked at the human admiral. She saw the predator in those forward-facing eyes. She saw the strength in that solid body. She saw the 1,000 generations of violence and survival that had created this terrifying species. But she also saw something else. Something that made her hearts ache with a strange kind of hope. She saw someone who had chosen to be good, despite every reason to be bad. You are not monsters, Thessaly said softly. You are something far more complicated than that. Elena smiled her predator smile. But this time, Thessaly was not afraid of it. Perhaps, the Admiral agreed. But complicated or not, we are here. And when the swarm arrives, they will learn exactly what a Deathworld species can do when it decides to fight. The Krivek swarm arrived on the 6th day. Ambassador, Thessaly stood on the bridge of the Perseverance and watched 10,000 enemy ships fill the darkness of space. They came like a wave of death, blocking out the stars with their massive numbers. Each ship was covered in sharp spines and organic growths that made them look like living creatures. At the center of the formation, the swarm's flagship floated like a great beast, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent light. The Volanti officers who had joined Thessaly on the human ship began to tremble. They had seen what the swarm could do. They had watched their worlds burn. Against such an enemy, what chance did 47 human ships have? Admiral Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the bridge, calm as stone. Around her, human officers worked their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no fear. These were creatures born for war. And they had been waiting for this moment. Status report, Elena commanded. All ships in position, replied the tactical officer. Weapons charged. Shields at maximum. Marines ready for boarding defense. Enemy fleet? 10,200 ships, approaching in standard swarm formation. They will reach weapons range in 15 minutes. Elena nodded slowly. Open a channel to the fleet. A moment later, her voice echoed across all 47 human vessels. This is Admiral Vasquez. The enemy is here. They outnumber us more than 200 to 1. They have conquered dozens of worlds and killed billions of innocent lives. They think we are just another obstacle to be destroyed. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was iron. They are wrong. Today, we teach them what it means to fight humans. Today, we show them why the galaxy fears us. Today, we make them regret ever threatening the people we have sworn to protect. All ships, battle stations. Let us show these bugs what a Deathworld species can do. The channel closed. Elena turned to look at Thessaly, and her predator eyes were filled with fierce joy. You might want to hold on to something. Ambassador. The battle began. The swarm attacked the way it always attacked, with overwhelming numbers and savage aggression. Thousands of ships rushed forward, expecting the human fleet to crumble under the pressure. They had done this 100 times before. No species had ever survived their initial charge, but the humans did not crumble. The first wave of human weapons fire tore through the swarm like lightning through clouds. Kinetic projectiles, accelerated to unbelievable speeds, punched through swarm ships as if they were made of paper. Plasma cannons turned enemy vessels into expanding balls of fire. Missiles, each one carrying enough explosive force to level a small city, detonated in chains that consumed entire squadrons. The swarm lost 500 ships in the first 3 minutes. They had never lost that many so quickly. Their formation wavered, uncertain. The human fleet pressed the advantage, advancing through the debris and firing constantly. The Perseverance led the charge, its massive weapons batteries, creating a wall of destruction that nothing could pass through. Thessaly watched in shocked silence. She had seen recordings of the swarm's attacks on Volanti worlds. The enemy had seemed unstoppable, invincible. They had swept aside every defense like it was nothing. But against the humans, they were dying by the thousands. How is this possible? She whispered. Colonel Marcus Stone, the commander of the ship's marine forces, stood nearby. He was a massive human, covered in battle scars, with eyes that had seen 1,000 conflicts. We evolved to kill things bigger than us, he said simply. The swarm is just another predator. And humans have been hunting predators since we learned to walk. The swarm regrouped and tried a different approach. They spread out, surrounding the human fleet, trying to attack from all sides at once. But the humans had expected this. They formed their ships into a tight defensive formation, each vessel protecting its neighbors. Their shields overlapped, creating a barrier that the swarm weapons could not penetrate. And still the human guns fired. Ship after ship of the swarm fleet exploded into fragments. The enemy tried ramming attacks, but human point defense systems destroyed them before they could connect. They tried sending boarding parties, but human marines met them at the airlocks and slaughtered them in close combat. Thessaly saw footage from one of these boarding actions. Swarm warriors poured through a breached hull, their claws and mandibles ready to tear humans apart. But the humans were waiting. They fought with a ferocity that made the swarm look tame. They shot, stabbed, punched, and bit their attackers. When their weapons ran empty, they used their fists. When their fists were broken, they used their heads. When they should have fallen from their wounds, they kept fighting anyway. The swarm warriors, creatures that had terrified every species they had encountered, began to retreat. They were afraid. Hours passed. The battle raged across the space around Volanti Prime. The swarm kept sending more ships, kept trying new tactics, kept sacrificing thousands in hopes of overwhelming the human defense. But nothing worked. The human fleet was too well trained, too well armed, too determined to break. Finally, Admiral Vasquez gave a new order. Target the flagship. All ships, concentrate fire. The human fleet turned as one. 47 vessels focused their combined firepower on the massive command ship at the center of the swarm formation. The swarm tried to defend it, throwing ships in the way, surrounding it with layers of protection. But the human weapons tore through everything. The flagship's shields failed first. Then its armor cracked. Then its hull began to rupture. Inside, the Swan Queen screamed commands that no one could obey. The final shot came from the Perseverance. A single kinetic round, accelerated to near light speed, struck the flagship's reactor core. The explosion was visible from Volante Prime. When the light faded, the flagship was gone. And with it, the central intelligence that coordinated the swarm's attacks. The remaining swarm ships fell into chaos. Without their queens to guide them, the warriors did not know what to do. Some continued attacking blindly. Some tried to flee. Some simply drifted, their pilots waiting for orders that would never come. Admiral Vasquez opened a broadcast on all frequencies. "Krivek Swarm," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was fire beneath the calm. "Your queens are dead. Your fleet is broken. This system is under the protection of humanity. If you leave now, we will not pursue you. If you stay, we will destroy every last one of you." She paused. Choose. The swarm chose to run. The surviving ships, less than 2,000 of the original 10,000, turned and fled into the darkness between stars. They ran faster than they had ever run from anything. They ran like prey fleeing from a predator they could not defeat. Behind them, the human fleet did not pursue. They held their position, watching, waiting, making sure the enemy was truly gone. On the bridge of the Perseverance, silence fell. The officers sat at their stations, exhausted but triumphant. Many were wounded. Some had lost friends. But they had won. Thessaly realized she was crying. Tears streamed down her face, and she did not try to stop them. "You did it," she said, her voice breaking. "You saved us." Elena Vasquez turned to face her. The Admiral was covered in sweat, and her uniform was stained with smoke. But she was smiling. "We did what we came to do," she said. "The swarm will think twice before attacking innocent species again. Word will spread. Other predators will learn that the galaxy is no longer undefended. How can we ever repay you?" Elena reached out and placed a hand on Thessaly's shoulder. It was a gesture of comfort, of connection. A predator's hand, gentle as a whisper. "Live," the Admiral said simply. "Rebuild. Be happy. That is all the payment we need." Outside the viewport, the stars shone peacefully once more. The swarm was gone. Volante Prime was safe, and standing between the innocent and the darkness were the monsters of Earth, bloody but unbroken, keeping their promise to protect. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Volante Prime. The scars of war were slowly healing. Ships that had been damaged were being repaired. Stations that had been destroyed were being rebuilt. Refugees who had fled their homes were returning, finding their cities still standing. Their families still alive. The Volante had survived. Ambassador Thessaly walked through the gardens of the capital city, her thin robes flowing in the gentle breeze. These gardens had been planted centuries ago by her ancestors. They were filled with flowers that bloomed in 1,000 different colors. Trees that sang when the wind touched their leaves. And pools of water so clear you could see to the bottom. Before the war, she had taken this place for granted. Now, she treasured every petal, every blade of grass, every drop of water. Because she understood how close they had come to losing it all. She was not alone in the gardens. Human children were playing among the flowers, chasing each other and laughing. Volante Young watched them with fascination and delight. The human children moved so fast, so confidently. They climbed trees that Volanti youth would never attempt. They splashed in pools without any fear of drowning. They fell down and scraped their knees and got back up without crying. The Volanti children had started trying to copy them. "It is remarkable, is it not?" said a voice beside her. Thessaly turned to find Admiral Elena Vasquez walking up the garden path. The human had changed in these past months. The weight of battle no longer pressed on her shoulders. Her predator eyes had softened. She looked almost peaceful. "What is remarkable?" Thessaly asked. "How quickly children adapt." Elena gestured toward a group of mixed human and Volanti young who were playing some kind of game together. They do not see differences the way adults do. They just see potential friends. Thessaly watched a small Volanti child chase a human girl around a flower bed. Both were giggling uncontrollably. The human girl pretended to be slow so her friend could catch her. "Your people have been very kind," Thessaly said. "You did not have to stay after the battle. But your ships are still here. Your soldiers have been helping with reconstruction. Your doctors have been treating our wounded." "We wanted to make sure the swarm would not return," Elena replied. "And, well, we grew fond of you. Your people are good, gentle. The galaxy needs more species like the Volanti." They walked together in comfortable silence for a while. The flowers swayed around them. Birds from both Earth and Volanti Prime flew through the air, already learning to share the sky. "I have been thinking," Thessaly said eventually, "about what you told me, about why humans fight, about the choice you made to become protectors instead of conquerors." Elena nodded but said nothing. "I always thought peace and strength were opposites," Thessaly continued. "Our people chose peace, so we had no strength. We could not defend ourselves. We were helpless against the swarm. And now? Now I understand that peace and strength can exist together. You have shown us that." Thessaly stopped walking and turned to face the Admiral. "We will never be warriors like your people. That is not who we are. But we can learn to stand tall. We can learn to protect what we love. We can learn courage." Elena smiled warmly. "Courage is not about being unafraid, Ambassador. It is about being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. Your people sent a message into the unknown, calling for help from a species you had every reason to fear. That took tremendous courage. We were desperate. Desperation does not create courage. It reveals it." Elena placed her hand over her heart. "You had the courage inside you all along. You just needed a reason to find it." Thessaly thought about that for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been troubling her for weeks. "What happens now? Your people will leave eventually. You have your own world, your own lives. What happens to us when you are gone?" Elena's expression grew serious. "That is actually what I wanted to talk to you about. The United Earth government has been in contact with your High Council. We have a proposal." She pulled out a small device and projected an image into the air. It showed a symbol that Thessaly had never seen before. Two circles, one representing Earth and one representing Volanti Prime, linked by a bridge of stars. "We want to form an alliance," Elena explained. "A permanent partnership between our species. We will provide protection, military training, and technology. You will share your scientific knowledge, your art, your philosophy. Together, we can build something new, something that neither of us could create alone." Thessaly stared at the image. "You would bind your fate to ours? Even knowing that we cannot help you fight? Fighting is only part of what makes a civilization strong. You have things we lack: beauty, wisdom, peace." Elena lowered the projection device. "Humans are very good at destruction, but we are still learning how to build. You can teach us." The offer hung in the air between them like a precious gift. Thessaly felt tears forming in her eyes again. She had cried more in the past 3 months than in her entire previous life. "I will bring this proposal to the High Council," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I already know what they will say." "And what is that?" Thessaly reached out and took Elena's hand. The human skin was rough and warm. Dangerous hands. Hands that could kill with terrible efficiency, but also hands that could build, protect, and comfort. "They will say yes." 1 year later, the Volanti Earth Alliance was officially formed. A new embassy was built on Volanti Prime, staffed by humans who had volunteered to live among their new friends. Volanti scholars traveled to Earth to study human art, music, and history. Human children were enrolled in Volanti schools to learn gentleness and patience. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Species that had hidden from humanity now watched with cautious hope. The monsters of the Deathworld had taken a peaceful civilization under their protection. They had fought and bled and died for strangers. They had asked for nothing in return except friendship. Perhaps, some began to whisper, the humans were not monsters after all. Perhaps they were something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had all the strength to conquer the stars, but chose instead to guard them. The Kravex swarm never returned to Volanti space. In fact, they began retreating from territories they had held for centuries. Word had reached their queens about what had happened. About the Deathworld warriors who had broken their fleet and killed their leaders. About the species that refused to let the innocent suffer. Other predators heard the stories too. They began to think twice before attacking weaker civilizations. Because now there was a chance, however small, that their victims would call out for help. And something might answer. Ambassador Thessaly, now serving as the first Volanti representative to Earth, stood on a balcony overlooking a human city. Millions of people lived below her, going about their daily lives. They walked their dangerous streets, breathed their poisonous air, and smiled at each other despite all the hardships of existing on a Deathworld. Beside her stood Elena Vasquez, now retired from the military and serving as a diplomat. "Do you remember what you asked me?" Elena said. "Back at the beginning? You asked why we came to help you." Thessaly nodded. "You said it was because we were suffering and afraid. Because that was enough. I told you the truth. But there was more to it than that." Elena leaned against the railing and looked up at the night sky. The stars were barely visible through the city lights, but they were there. Always there. "Humans spend most of our existence alone," she said quietly. "We looked up at those stars and wondered if there was anyone else out there. Anyone who might understand us. Anyone who might accept us despite all our flaws." She turned to look at Thessaly. "When we finally reached the stars, we found that everyone was afraid of us. They saw only the violence in our history, the danger in our nature. No one wanted to be our friend. We were alone again, even in a galaxy full of life." Her voice softened. "And then you called for help. A peaceful people, facing destruction, with nowhere else to turn. You reached out to us, even though you were terrified of what we might be." Elena smiled, and for once, it was not a predator's smile. It was something gentler. Something human in the best sense of the word. "You gave us a chance to prove we could be good. You gave us a purpose beyond fighting and surviving. You gave us," she paused, searching for the right word. "Family," Thessaly finished quietly. Elena nodded. Family. They stood together in silence, two creatures from two worlds, watching the stars that had brought them together. Behind them, human and Volanti voices mixed in conversation and laughter. Children ran past, playing games that blended both cultures. Scientists discussed projects that would benefit both species. Soldiers who had once fought side by side now built side by side. The galaxy had called for help. What arrived were monsters, but monsters could learn. Monsters could change. Monsters could choose what they wanted to be. And these monsters had chosen to become something wonderful. They had chosen to become friends.